Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the first of our three-part webinar series for this year for our PENNVEST virtual training events. My name is Brendan Linton. I am the Region 1 Project Specialist for PENNVEST. I cover the 14 Northwestern counties in the Commonwealth. It's again great to have you with us today as we explore the different options that we have available through PENNVEST for clean water project financing. This presentation is going to be a very broad overview of the various options that PENNVEST has available to municipalities, municipal authorities, and systems across the Commonwealth that have clean water project financing needs. We will have, as I mentioned, 2 additional webinars available for registration later this year that specifically dive into our application system and specific components of our application process. So again, today's presentation is going to be a very high-level overview of our process, very beneficial for those that have never worked with PENNVEST before or for systems that have not worked with PENNVEST in a number of years. So hopefully you will find the material very helpful to your organizations that we'll go over today. So to get us started today, just a quick overview of PENNVEST, who we are and what we do. PENNVEST is a state-affiliated entity, and we are actually a fairly young one at that. In fact, we just turned 37 years old at the beginning of this month. PENNVEST was created by the General Assembly through Act 16 of 1988. Our agency consists of 34 full-time staff members. We are actually one of the smallest agencies in state government. And as our program has grown over the years, we now have employees located across the Commonwealth. We are governed by a 13-member board of directors. Our board of directors is chaired by the governor or a designee. Governor Shapiro has designated Dr. Brian Regley, who is the executive director for critical investments in the governor's office, as our board chairman. So the purpose of the PENNVEST program is to fund clean water projects. The vast majority of the projects that we fund are drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. And these are what we call our traditional projects. Now, in terms of what types of projects we can fund under that umbrella, it's pretty much any type of construction project that improves water quality for Pennsylvania citizens. Examples could include a water treatment plant improvement, a brand new water treatment plant, replacement of water transmission lines, distribution lines in a community. Under the wastewater section of our program, it could be a wastewater treatment plant upgrade, pump station upgrades, upgrading collection system equipment at the plant. You kind of get the idea. Really, any type of construction project that you can think of, we can finance through PENNVEST. We also finance stormwater system projects. So large or small, we can finance stormwater projects as well. In addition to construction projects, PENNVEST can also finance what are called capital contributions. So in suburban areas where an outlying municipality has a portion of its wastewater being conveyed to a neighboring township, borough, or municipal authority's plant for treatment, we can actually provide funding to that outlying municipality to be used as a contribution towards upgrades to that overall shared system. We are also able to fund projects under non-point source. That could include agricultural best management practices with the end goal of mitigating water runoff contamination to nearby streams. In these types of projects, the borrower could be either county conservation districts or private farm owners. Acid mine drainage treatment systems, brownfield remediation, and green infrastructure projects are also other types of non-point source projects that can be funded through PENNVEST. By green infrastructure, that could include things like a green roof on a building, pervious pavement that could channel or absorb stormwater for a business, or a main street revitalization project in a city or a borough, for example. For those street revitalization projects, PENNVEST would not fund streetscape enhancements like street lamps, bike racks, or benches, but we can fund things like curb bump outs at intersections that collect stormwater. The final program that we have is a residential program, the homeowner sewage program. That is funded through PENNVEST, but is administered by the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. And through that program, we provide funding directly to residential property owners for on-lot septic system repairs and first-time connections to public sewage systems. We'll get into that program later on in today's presentation. Before we dive into some details of the program, I'll share some fast facts about PENNVEST. Here at PENNVEST, we can provide complete project financing with no matching funds or tap fee contributions required. So, for example, let's say you are a municipal authority and you have a need to build a new water treatment plant, and that project cost is $10 million. If you meet our program requirements, you apply to PENNVEST for that $10 million, you will receive an offer back from PENNVEST for the full $10 million that you request. Many years ago, PENNVEST was not able to fund all project applications that it received, and in some cases, PENNVEST had to award partial funding offers. In today's funding environment, if you apply to PENNVEST and you meet all of our program requirements, you will get back the full amount that you request, whether it is grant, loan, or a mix of both. Again, we can fund most project costs from start to finish. That would include engineering, design, and permit costs, as well as most legal expenses. All of those expenses you can roll into your PENNVEST application. One exception is Act 537 sewage facilities planning costs. By state law, we are not allowed to fund those costs, but we can certainly cover project costs that an approved Act 537 plan calls to implement. A major misconception is that PENNVEST is a program that provides grant funding or that you apply for a PENNVEST grant, and that's not necessarily the case. Our main role is to be a revolving loan program. When we provide loans to municipalities, municipal authorities, and other borrowers across the Commonwealth, the interest that is paid on those loans goes back into the PENNVEST program and helps to sustain the program for future generations. There are ways for applicants to receive grants through PENNVEST, or what we call principal forgiveness dollars, and we'll get into that process a little bit later. Typically, the majority of PENNVEST offers that come back involve some form of a loan component. However, we can also work with other funding programs and serve as a local match. As a hypothetical example, we may have a municipality that comes into PENNVEST and says they've received $500,000 from, let's say, the Commonwealth Financing Authority, DCED, DCNR, or some other state or federal funding program. In many cases, PENNVEST can work as a required local match for the rest of that project's funding needs. One item to note is that PENNVEST is not able to refinance previous projects or long-term outstanding debt. We are only able to fund new project applications that come in. With that in mind, we truly have some of the cheapest money you can find today, given the current economic conditions and given that interest rates are still a bit high. If you were to go to a private bank or local lender and compare their interest rates with our rates, you will find that PENNVEST interest rates can be as low as 1%. So given the current economic conditions, you can capitalize on the PENNVEST program and save a tremendous amount of money on interest payments alone. And finally, we say this is a joke. We're from the government and we're here to help, but we truly are here to help. We are here to help you succeed in your clean water improvement projects. Here at PENNVEST, it's very, very unusual that an answer to a question that we are asked is no. We are dedicated to finding solutions for those who come to us for help. Who can PENNVEST work with? The short answer to that question is pretty much anyone across the Commonwealth, whether they are a public or private entity. So, if you are one of the 2,559 municipalities in this Commonwealth, we can work directly with you. If you are a municipal authority, we can also work with you. We also work with private investor-owned or non-investor-owned utility companies. That includes Pennsylvania American Water and Aqua Pennsylvania, just to name a few. We work with PA American and Aqua quite often through our program. We can also work with any of the 67 counties and county conservation districts. And if you are a school district, if you are one of the 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, we can also work with you on a project. In addition to any of those entities, if you are a business, if you are a homeowner association, a condominium association, a retirement community, pretty much any public or private entity that you can think of, we are able to work with you through the PENNVEST program. The main takeaway is that all projects that PENNVEST funds must have a positive water quality impact. One keynote, if you are coming into PENNVEST for a drinking water project, you must have a system with a public water system identification number or a PWS-ID, and the borrower or the applicant must be the owner and operator of that system. PENNVEST is not able to work with a private well, an on-lot well, or some form of a private water system that does not have a PWS-ID. Other than that, we can work with pretty much anyone in the Commonwealth in need of financing for a clean water project. Now, PENNVEST receives funding from various federal and state sources. Much of our funding, roughly 50% or more, comes from the federal government. Most of that is from the U.S. EPA's Drinking Water and Clean Water State Revolving Funds. We also have some funds for investment income and interest earned. Our state funding comes mainly from Growing Greener grants and proceeds from state general obligation bonds that were approved by voter referendums dating back to 1981. Less than 1% of our funding comes from the state's general fund. So due to the revolving fund model of our program, PENNVEST is fairly self-sufficient. The main takeaway for all of you as potential applicants and borrowers is that our budget for the current fiscal year is $1 billion. We have plenty of funds available to put out on the street for clean water projects across the Commonwealth. Our funding is spread equally across each PENNVEST board meeting, so the funding does not run out at the beginning of the fiscal year. There's not a rush at the beginning of the year and all the money dries up. We have funding available throughout the year, and we encourage applicants to submit an application to us whenever a project is ready to move forward. We also have additional funds available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and those are available for various clean water and drinking water projects. These funds are factored into our current budget, and there is no special application required to take advantage of those funds. You submit a uniform application to us through our online system, and you are automatically considered for those funds if they are appropriate to your project. Because we receive federal funds at PENNVEST, there are some regulatory requirements you will need to keep in mind should you apply. I'm sure many folks on the call here are familiar with some of these terms. On the left-hand side of this slide, these requirements apply to all PENNVEST funded projects. So PENNVEST does require competitive procurement or equal provisions in bid documents in compliance, with both the Pennsylvania Steel Products Procurement Act and the PA Prevailing Wage Act. So at bare minimum, when you come into PENNVEST, you should expect to comply with those regulatory requirements. Now, if you receive federal funds from PENNVEST, that means you'll need to comply with American Iron and Steel and Davis-Bacon wage rate Davis-Bacon wage rate requirements, For wastewater projects, a fiscal sustainability plan is also required. If you receive federal equivalency dollars, that's when you get into disadvantaged business enterprise solicitations, Build America, Buy America Act, and several other items. When you apply to PENNVEST, you submit a uniform application, and then after you submit that application, we review it behind the scenes and determine the best funding package that fits your project and your overall system. When you get that funding offer back from us, that is when you'll be notified exactly the source of your funding and exactly what regulations apply to your funding package. One note pertaining to systems out there that may be thinking about coming to PENNVEST for a wastewater project, especially one that is extremely large in cost and or size. Wastewater project applicants should consider completing what is known as an architectural and engineering procurement process prior to starting design. And this helps ensure that at PENNVEST we can provide you the best funding package possible when you complete our process. There is a set process administered through the Pennsylvania DEP. The DEP can assist you with the RFQ and DBE procedures pertaining to A&E procurement. Any wastewater project that applies through PENNVEST without completing this process is still eligible, but we may have to provide you a separate funding offer solely for architectural and engineering costs. In an exceptionally rare case, if we do not have enough funds to do that, there is a slight chance that those costs may have to be self-funded by the applicant. So again, for any large wastewater projects, we encourage you to reach out to us in advance, and we can assist you with the completion of this procurement process in collaboration with our colleagues at the Pennsylvania DEP. So PENNVEST has grown tremendously since 1988 when we were created by the General Assembly. As of today, we have funded just over 5,100 projects across all 67 counties, a total investment of $12.9 billion. You can go nearly anywhere in the Commonwealth throughout rural and urban areas, and you will find a PENNVEST project. We have had a tremendous impact on the Commonwealth over the years, improving public health and the environment, promoting economic development, providing job growth, and facilitating job retention. Next, we'll dive into the PENNVEST application process and give you a high-level overview of how to apply for funding. PENNVEST funding takes place through a multi-step process. This slide is just a general summary of each step, and we'll go over each of these individually so you get a picture of each of these stages. The overwhelming majority of our application process takes place online or in some electronic format. This process is standardized across the Commonwealth, so no matter where your project is located, no matter what project specialist you are working with, each applicant is going to go through the same set of steps. The first step to work with PENNVEST is to contact the PENNVEST project specialist serving your area. So for example, if you are located in the northwest region of the Commonwealth, so the best way of determining that, if you fall under the jurisdiction of the Meadville Regional Office for the Pennsylvania DEP, I would be your PENNVEST project specialist. There are several colleagues of mine across the Commonwealth that cover the other regions. You'll want to reach out to us to get started with our application process. For a complete list of contact information, we encourage you to go to our website at pa.gov/PENNVEST. You will find a button that says Apply for PENNVEST Funding. You can type in the county where your project is located, and it will give you a list of names, phone numbers, and email addresses for PENNVEST and DEP contacts. So we'll have a slide of all those contacts at the end of this presentation. For this initial step, you'll reach out to your PENNVEST project specialist. Give us some basic details on your project. Your project specialist will then be able to provide direction depending on the information that you've provided. If we determine that the project is ready to move forward, we'll send to you a brief intake questionnaire. This questionnaire has mostly yes or no questions and allows us to evaluate your project on a very preliminary basis. Just as a side note, if you work for an engineering firm and you go across different PENNVEST regions, you'll want to reach out to the PENNVEST project specialist each time you have a new project. Each PENNVEST project specialist does have a questionnaire that is slightly different because we like to gather some additional information that is unique to our particular regions. Once we receive the completed questionnaire, we'll review and circulate the information to DEP for their initial review as well. And that questionnaire helps PENNVEST and DEP prepare for the next step of the process, which is a planning consultation. This consultation is mandatory, and it should take place between 3 and 9 months in advance of submitting your application to us. We can certainly meet in advance of 9 months if you'd like to simply discuss our program, generally in various options that are available to you. These consultations can take place virtually, or in many cases, your PENNVEST project specialist will come to you, whichever is more convenient. Typically, during the planning consultation, the applicant is present with their engineer, the PENNVEST project specialist is in attendance, and then various representatives from the Pennsylvania DEP and other state agencies will also join. During this meeting, we will discuss the specific PENNVEST application requirements that pertain to your project. The DEP representatives from the regional office and the Municipal Facilities Division will confirm any environmental permits and clearances that you may need. We can also provide a general idea of what you can expect for a PENNVEST funding package. At this planning consultation, we can't make guarantees as to whether or not you will receive all loan, a partial loan and grant, or eligible for all grant, but we can give you an estimate of what we have at that time based upon the information that we discuss. The third step is to complete environmental clearances, and this is a significant difference within PENNVEST compared to some other funding programs. At PENNVEST, we require all projects to be shovel-ready at the time you submit your application to us. And what we mean by shovel-ready is that your design work has to be complete and all of your environmental-related permits must be issued and in hand. Typically, if you apply to some other funding agencies out there, you just apply for funding, you submit a fairly basic application. And then if you are a recipient of funding, if you are successful with that process, you then begin design. At PENNVEST, we're a bit backwards, we're a bit different there. We require all of that design and engineering work to be completed first. Remember, all of those design costs, with the exception of Act 537 sewage facilities planning, are reimbursable. When you submit your PENNVEST construction application, we encourage applicants to factor in these costs into the budget. For example, if an applicant has engineering costs of $150,000 to get to that shovel-ready stage, that can be factored into a budget within a PENNVEST construction application. That applicant, once the funding offer is approved, that applicant can reimburse themselves once they get through settlement. Biddable plans and specifications must also be made available for review by your assigned DEP project manager. Again, DEP personnel are present at the planning consultation, but we certainly encourage applicants to keep DEP informed as to where they are in the process. This affords the opportunity to discuss permits required with the associated DEP regional office staff and avoid delays with PENNVEST's overall application process. The fourth step is to submit an online application. The PENNVEST application process is fully electronic from start to finish. We no longer accept any paper applications. We use the Keystone login system to authenticate users to our system. So if you've worked with other Commonwealth agencies, you may already have a Keystone login account. You can use those exact same credentials to get into our system. So we accept applications 4 times per year. The application cutoff dates are listed on the left-hand side of the slide here, and those application dates correspond with our PENNVEST Board of Directors meetings on the right-hand side. Roughly 2.5 months after a cutoff date is when our Board of Directors would convene to review the applications that have been submitted and deemed technically and administratively eligible for funding to formally recommend and approve those offers. Applications are due to PENNVEST on the specified cutoff date by 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We are still in the process of putting together dates for the next fiscal year. Once those dates are approved by our Board of Directors at our April 23rd meeting, we will update those dates with the respective cutoffs on our website at pa.gov/PENNVEST. After you submit an application to PENNVEST, it goes through a ranking and review process by 3 different agencies. The DEP evaluates every project and assigns priority points for public health and safety, environmental related items, compliance issues, and other technical and engineering aspects associated with the system and the application that's being reviewed. The DCED awards points for economic development categories, including job creation, job growth and retention, industrial expansion, and in some cases, how a project can support tourism. PENNVEST evaluates the borrower's overall financial capability. We make the recommendation to our board of directors for the funding offer and determine collateral requirements. One important takeaway from this is that the ranking and review process is only used if we need to defer projects due to lack of funding. Because our program has grown substantially through the revolving loan model, we've not had to defer projects for many years or issue partial funding offers. Every project application that is technically and administratively ready to go since the mid-2010s has received a full funding offer for the original dollar amount requested. After the ranking and review process is complete for all the projects submitted by a cutoff date, the ones that meet those technical and administrative readiness requirements are then recommended to our board of directors for their next quarterly board meeting. We don't require applicants to come down to Harrisburg and attend the board meeting, but we certainly encourage folks to join us, whether in person or online. Our board meetings are in virtual and in-person format in a hybrid setup. Attendees from the public are certainly welcome to join us. If you've never seen a PENNVEST board meeting before, you may want to join us online for our next meeting to give you an idea of what to expect when you are ready to start our application process. And the team's information is always available on our website a few days in advance of each board meeting. Once the board has voted to approve a funding offer, PENNVEST issues a notification through email to the applicant. This email contains all of the relevant terms and conditions associated with the funding. So you'll know at that time the type of funding that you are receiving, the total amount that you have requested, what amount is grant, what amount is loan, the interest rates associated with the loan, and all of the terms and conditions. If it's federally funded, state funded, all of the components of your funding offer will be contained in this document that is emailed out. After you receive a funding offer from PENNVEST, the next step is to complete a series of 5 settlement calls with our legal services and finance management teams. During the first call, we review the funding offer with you and those terms and conditions and determine the schedule of when you wish to bid out your project. After you bid out your project and open bids, we hold a second call to review those bids. During that call, we determine if you have sufficient funding available to move forward with the rest of the process. If there is a funding shortfall, PENNVEST allows borrowers to come back for an increased amount of funding through an expedited process. You do not have to withdraw your application or submit a whole new one. However, once you have an offer in hand from the board, it's important to note that any funding increase that is awarded at this stage would be offered as a loan only. No additional grant dollars are awarded, but the interest rate that is attached to the main funding offer is kept the same. On the third call, we review the settlement documentation with the borrower. It's very similar to when you close a home loan or a car loan, but everything is electronic through our online system. We review those documents, discuss any final legal matters that may arise. The fourth call is when we sign the closing paperwork. Just like the application process, all closing documents are signed electronically through DocuSign. And then during the fifth call, we review bank account requirements and how you access the approved funds. The ninth step is during construction and the disbursement phase. Once you're in the disbursement status, remember that PENNVEST is a reimbursement lender. Funds must be requested from us on a monthly basis through an online system, and those funds are transferred to borrowers through ACH or wire. You can begin construction once settlement is complete. Remember that PENNVEST does not permit projects to begin construction or material acquisition early prior to the completion of settlement. That is a prohibition in our agency's enabling statutes and regulations. If for some reason a system has an emergency, an immediate public health hazard, or other qualifying reason, be sure to reach out to your PENNVEST project specialist. Typically, we can determine if you are eligible for what is known as a letter of no prejudice, and that letter waives that rule. Otherwise, you cannot begin construction or material acquisition prior to completion of settlement. Payments and change orders are processed electronically through our online system. We allow borrowers up to 36 months of interest-only payments during construction for a traditional project. The final step is project closeout. Once a project has completed construction, you will submit a final pay request through the PENNVEST portal. We will be notified that that is the final payment request, and then DEP and PENNVEST will conduct an on-site final inspection. There's a 5% holdback of the project costs until that inspection is complete. Once it is completed and the paperwork is finalized, we reconcile your final costs and move your project to repayment status if your offer included a loan component. And that is the final step in the overall process from start to finish of how you receive funding through the PENNVEST program. The most asked question prior to an entity applying to PENNVEST is, will I get grant, will I get loan, or will I get a mix of both? So I'd like to focus on that, but I want to touch on a few funding limitations first. We are often asked how much money an entity can request from PENNVEST. We're going to talk specifically about stormwater projects first, because these types of projects are fairly unique based upon our enabling legislation. Stormwater projects, this is based upon the number of municipalities currently served and or proposed to be served by a project, and it's tied to the number of residents within those municipalities. And again, I want to stress what you're seeing here. This is for stormwater projects only. The total funding that you can request from PENNVEST per application cannot exceed $1,000 per resident within the municipality or municipalities served, or a $10 million flat cap, whichever is less. And again, to note, this is not a lifetime maximum or an annual maximum, but is a limitation per application solely for stormwater projects. Now, for all other projects outside of stormwater, limitations are also based on the number of municipalities that are currently served and or proposed to be served by a project. This includes both direct bill customers as well as bulk service customers that may be sending wastewater to a neighboring system, or in the case of a drinking water system, customers that are tied in as a consecutive system. For a system that has a project that serves one municipality, the funding cap is $11 million per application. For a project that serves 2 or 3 municipalities, that limit bumps up to $20 million per application. For a project that serves 4 or more municipalities, there is no limit with a supermajority vote of approval by the PENNVEST Board of Directors. Now I'll explain how we determine how applicants are offered a grant, a loan, or a combination of both. For drinking water and wastewater projects, grant funding is available to PENNVEST applicants who qualify that own, operate, and maintain systems which serve and direct bill residential customers. This determination process is uniform across all applications we receive. For our traditional program, we calculate 2 different types of rates. We first calculate the target rate, and that is a percentage of a municipality's median household income. And that target rate is somewhere between 0.5% to 1.25% of the median household income. And that takes into consideration various social and economic factors. For stormwater projects only, the percentage of median household income is fixed at 0.25% across the Commonwealth. Regardless of the score that may be assigned to a particular municipality, for a resulting rate, we look at a proposed project that has applied to PENNVEST, and we assume that the project will receive all loan at the standard county cap interest rates. I'll get into those in a second. We calculate the project for that project, what that annual debt service would be if they would receive all loan. We also look at the current annual debt of that applicant, including other outstanding PENNVEST loans, USDA rural development loans, private bank loans, any other debt related to their system. And then finally, we look at the O&M costs of the applicant's system. Once we calculate the target rate and the resulting rate, then we do a comparison. If that resulting rate is at or below the target rate, the applicant will receive all loan with their PENNVEST offer. The loan offer will have the county-specific interest rate applied for the county where the project resides, and we'll get into those rates here on the next slide. But let's say that resulting rate is above the target rate, or in other words, the cost of a particular project would result in an average residential user rate that is deemed to be unaffordable. We would look at implementing some hardship considerations if we are able to do so. Those considerations could include a reduced interest rate to as low as 1% for the full term of the loan, regardless of what the interest rate is set at for a particular county. A second option would be to apply some grant or principal forgiveness dollars to that funding offer, which would be dollars that do not have to be repaid by the borrower. The third option would be to extend the term of the loan from 20 years, and 20 years is our standard loan term, and we would extend that to 30 years. It is very important to note that grant funds within the PENNVEST program are often prorated due to demand, and they are not guaranteed. It is technically possible to receive a PENNVEST offer that is all principal forgiveness. But again, we are encouraging anyone that applies for funding to anticipate some form of a loan component when you submit your application. When you work with your PENNVEST project specialist and at the time of the planning consultation meeting, your PENNVEST project specialist, should be able to give you a general idea of what to expect once you get through our application process, even though we are not able to do a pre-qualification or a funding guarantee at that time. This is a map of the current interest rates for all 67 counties of the Commonwealth. These have been in effect since May of 2024. There are 3 tiers of interest rates that are in place at this time. If you are in Forest, Cameron, or Potter counties, the interest rate is 1% for the entire term of your loan up to 30 years. We do not have a 2-tier rate structure in those 3 counties at this time. If you are in any county in the yellow color, the interest rate is 1% for the first 5 years and 1.743% for the balance of the term. If you are in a county that is in the green color, the interest rate is 1.743% for the first 5 years and 2.179% for the balance of the term. Any system in the Commonwealth that crosses into multiple counties that has different interest rates will be given the lowest set of interest rates applicable to that grouping of counties. These interest rates are adjusted once per year, typically in the spring. The interest rates are locked in upon submission of an application to PENNVEST that is deemed technically and administratively complete. The only exception is for applications that are submitted during our annual rate adjustment period. If an application gets submitted to us and the rates change before the respective board meeting, it may be subject to a rate revision. Other than that exception, when you submit an application to PENNVEST and that application is deemed administratively and technically complete, those rates are locked in when you click the submit button. So again, for traditional PENNVEST applications, we use a uniform funding calculation across all 67 counties. No matter how big or how small your system is, all applications are treated the same. We will give you the best offer that we can provide in accordance with our program limitations and available funding. We encourage applicants that are looking to PENNVEST to explore other funding to bolster your project's capital stack. We have had projects come into PENNVEST that have received funding from other sources like the agencies listed on the slide here on the right-hand side. PENNVEST has worked with pretty much any other funding agency you can think of out there. And just remember, for other funding sources, you may have a local match requirement. In nearly all cases, funding that you receive from PENNVEST can serve as that local match that you may need to fulfill that requirement. It is important to communicate your plans across agencies as well. As an example of how this open communication can help save you a significant amount of money as an applicant, a municipality and its water authority in my region in the Northwest was planning a very complex PENNVEST-funded project. There are actually 3 projects in parallel. 2 were drinking water, 1 was wastewater. And they worked with their PennDOT engineering office during final design and through our PENNVEST settlement process. Because they shared project information with PennDOT, they learned that a major roadway project was already on a PennDOT project list. By coordinating project timelines with PennDOT, the municipality and its water authority was able to save over $500,000 from their budgets by not having to make extensive road repair after the PENNVEST specific work was complete. This coordination saved time, money, and effort across multiple state and local agencies, as well as various projects. I said earlier that we have some of the cheapest money available to you today. I want to give you a visual of what that looks like. This is a good example if an entity was looking to borrow $1 million from PENNVEST with a 1% interest rate. This loan through PENNVEST would equal about $103,000 in interest payments. Given that the interest rates in the private market right now are still fairly high, you can see that loans from other lending institutions with higher interest rates can skyrocket the amount of money a borrower would ultimately spend on interest alone that is secured outside of PENNVEST. We see many systems come into PENNVEST to take advantage of our low interest rates, as low as 1%, solely to save on interest alone. The savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest, in essence, works like a grant and is money that your ratepayers do not have to pay back in user fees. Now we'll touch on some special funding opportunities that PENNVEST has right now. These are some programs with special circumstances or one-off situations that we have access to that may be applicable for one of your upcoming projects. The first is our Advanced Funding Program. The Advanced Funding Program is a great program for brand new startup systems or new or existing systems in a defined environmental justice area, or one that can obtain funding from other sources. Remember that to begin an application through PENNVEST to support a construction project, you have to be at that shovel-ready stage. But we do run into cases where a municipality wants to put in a brand new system, and they may not have money available to get them to that shovel-ready stage. The Advanced Funding Program allows them to secure a loan to cover completion of design, engineering, permit, and environmental review costs to get to that point. Act 537 planning costs, as discussed earlier, are still not eligible under this program. We also allow new or existing systems to apply for this advanced funding program if they are in a Pennsylvania DEP-defined environmental justice area and or systems which cannot obtain funding through any other manner, and PENNVEST becomes a lender of last resort. With this program, we can award a maximum of $2 million for up to a 5-year term. This is typically all loan for the first 59 months, under which the borrower would make interest-only payments at 1%. At month 60, a one-time balloon payment is due immediately. However, if the borrower comes back to PENNVEST for their full construction financing before the 60th month, and they close that construction financing before the 60th month, we waive the balloon payment for the advanced funding and extend the term of the advanced funding loan to match the term of the construction loan or get as close to it as we can. One recent example of an advanced funding project is East Pennsboro Township Authority in Cumberland County, just west of Harrisburg. They needed help to design a non-point source project. They came to PENNVEST in 2019 for $500,000 under this advanced funding option. This helped the authority to move their project forward, and in January of this year, they received a loan for construction of just over $2.1 million, and that funded a stream restoration project. PENNVEST has several other successful drinking water and wastewater construction projects located throughout the Commonwealth, large and small, which originated through the help of this advanced funding option. So if you're interested in applying for the advanced funding program, be sure to reach out to your PENNVEST project specialist and we can get you additional information. Now, the next program is the Small Project Initiative, and this began after PENNVEST identified that our traditional construction application process may be too lengthy for smaller projects. In certain cases, smaller municipalities or smaller projects had received the bulk of funding they needed from other agencies, but needed just a little bit more money to get across the finish line. At PENNVEST, we've developed this program to expedite an application for small amounts of money for small amounts of projects, so folks do not have to wait for a quarterly board meeting to come up on the calendar. This initiative uses the same application system, still requires a planning consultation, still requires your design work and your permits to be in hand. But through this program, you can receive up to $500,000 in the form of a 20-year loan for a project cost that does not exceed $1 million, including contingency. The interest rates applied to this loan would be the county cap interest rates that apply for the county in which the project resides. Applicants under this option, again, use that same PENNVEST application system and planning process, but the turnaround time from submitting the application to receiving a funding offer back can be as little as 2 to 3 weeks. For drinking water and wastewater systems that would like to apply for a small project loan, the population of the municipality or service area must be 12,000 people or less, and they must have hookups of 1,000 or less in the system. In many cases, with exceptions, stormwater and certain agricultural projects are also eligible to receive a small project funding offer. To date, PENNVEST has funded 21 small projects for a total amount of $7.8 million. The last project is a water meter replacement project undertaken by the Cooper Township Municipal Authority in Clearfield County. They received just under $500,000 in PENNVEST funds to complete a meter replacement project. Once they submitted their application, it was determined to be administratively complete. We issued a funding offer to them in 2.5 weeks. You can apply anytime during the year. Just reach out to your PENNVEST project specialist and let them know that you'd like to apply for a small project. The other advantage with the small project is you do not have to comply with any federal funding requirements. We guarantee that you will receive state funding. So no Davis-Bacon wage rates, American Iron and Steel, Build America, Buy America Act, DBE solicitations. None of that would apply. You would only have to comply with our state funding requirements. Programmatic financing is another special funding option that we have available through the PENNVEST program. This is good for larger systems that have a capital improvement plan that would like to bundle a portion of that capital improvement plan, a series of projects, onto one PENNVEST application. The system would need to work with the PENNVEST project specialist for their area and provide that plan and identify those specific projects. The advantage of Pro-Fi funding, only one project has to be shovel ready. The remaining projects can be implemented over a 3-year period. The funding is in the form of a loan only. There are no grant funds available, no grant eligibility with this option. However, the Pro-Fi locks in the county cap interest rates with the first phase. If the interest rates were to change, that would not change through the remainder of the phases being implemented through the Pro-Fi. 9 different systems have taken advantage of the Pro-Fi program for a total of 18 approved applications. Out of that 18 approved application list, just over $800 million. The most recent system to receive Pro-Fi funding through PENNVEST is the Elizabethtown Area Water Authority in Lancaster County. That authority plans to replace about 34,000 feet of water line under 4 different phases. This is perhaps one of the best times in a generation to seek PENNVEST funding for drinking water systems that have lead service lines that need to be replaced. So under the bipartisan infrastructure law and related federal stimulus packages, PENNVEST has special funds available for those systems that would like to remove and replace lead service lines and lead goosenecks. To utilize this program, we require systems to do full lead line replacement. Partial replacement is not eligible. You will need to submit a separate application in the PENNVEST system, but you can pair that application with a traditional project. So for example, what we typically see for drinking water systems, they may replace a distribution line along a 3 or 4 block section of road. they will submit a concurrent application to replace lead service lines in that same area. They can come together at the same board meeting and be approved in parallel at the same time. For lead replacement projects, there is a higher chance of grant funding due to the nature of our financial analysis. Rather than looking at the financial impact of a project across the entire system, we only look at the rate impact of the residential customers that have lead service lines that need to be replaced. In many cases, that results in more grant funding depending on the demand that we have on those funds for a particular round. But regardless, applicants can gain, in many cases, more grant funds for these types of projects, even if they are typically not grant eligible through PENNVEST's traditional application pathway. Risk mitigation measures do have to be followed as required by the US EPA and the Pennsylvania DEP. You may have to provide water pitcher filters to those residential customers where the lead lines are being replaced. Those mitigation measures are eligible for reimbursement under the PENNVEST program. Since 2021, PENNVEST has tracked just shy of 37,000 lead service lines being removed from water systems in Pennsylvania. We have funded 33 projects removing approximately 26,432 lead service lines. The most recent applicant to receive a significant amount of funds through this application pathway is the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County. They will be replacing approximately 1,000 lead service lines throughout multiple boroughs in the Kiski Valley in both Westmoreland and Armstrong counties. We also have special funds available through the bipartisan infrastructure law for systems that have emerging contaminant issues. These funds are targeted primarily towards drinking water systems, but we do have some funds available for wastewater systems that have emerging contaminant treatment needs as well. These funds are available through our normal PENNVEST process, and the original cutoff dates that we discussed earlier in the presentation today still apply. With this program, there's a good chance of receiving grant funding if you have an emerging contaminant problem and you are looking to find funding to install a treatment system. Otherwise, you may receive all loan or a loan grant combination depending on funding availability. The Perkasie Regional Authority in the eastern portion of the Commonwealth in Bucks County is the first project funded under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law program to complete their emerging contaminant project. With high concentrations of PFOS and PFOA in private wells, the authority obtained PENNVEST funding to extend their drinking water distribution system to 53 existing households whose groundwater sources were contaminated by a large tire fire in the 1980s, where military-grade fire suppressants were previously used. The last program we'll touch on today is our homeowner sewage program, and this program is administered by the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. Under this program, PENNVEST provides low-cost financing to improve, replace, or repair individual on-lot sewage disposal systems or existing malfunctioning connections to public sewage systems. We can also use this program to connect for the first time public sewers to meet public health and environmental safety standards. To be eligible for this funding, the borrower must be the owner of the residence where the project is taking place, and this must be their primary residence. We would not fund a part-time residence or a vacation home. There is a fixed interest rate of 1.75%. The maximum term for most homes is 20 years. There is a 15-year term for manufactured homes. The maximum loan amount is $25,000. Although there is a credit check performed, there are no household income limits. So nearly any homeowner in this Commonwealth that has a full-time owner-occupied residence is eligible. The process to secure this funding is a little bit different than our other programs. Interested homeowners can contact the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency directly using the phone number on the slide here, or can visit the PHFA website for a referral to a local lender. Now, if you're a municipality or a municipal authority who would find this program helpful for residents within your communities, we can provide you hard copy flyers or electronic versions of those flyers that you can share with your residents. If you would like some of those flyers, please contact your PENNVEST project specialist and we will coordinate those flyers to be mailed out to you. We will also provide a link to an electronic version of that flyer in a follow-up email after today's presentation. So that really wraps up our presentation for today. As I mentioned at the start of our discussion this morning, we would like to share 2 additional sessions scheduled later this year that may be helpful for you if you're preparing for a future clean water project and you'd like to apply to PENNVEST for funding. On April 3rd, we're going to present a special webinar on what you need to do to be prepared to begin an application. We will dive into the term shovel ready, what you need to have completed to be deemed shovel ready. What do you need to include in your biddable plans and specifications to be submitted to DEP for review? What does the permitting process look like? We will also dive into A&E procurement and certain other special considerations and various do's and don'ts as part of our application system. The webinar scheduled for August 20th will walk you through the application portal that we use, known as the PV portal. We will go through page by page in our application system and help you better understand each section of our application. If you are interested in joining us for one or both of these webinars, please visit our website, pa.gov/PENNVEST. Under the Resources, Tools, and Training section, you will find a link for Training Center. You will then find a list of in-person and virtual events. On the right-hand side are the links to register for those 2 webinars. In addition to those webinars, we have a series of 7 upcoming in-person outreach events. The first event is on April 17th in Somerset County. Please feel free to register for those events if you are interested in joining us in person. Those in-person events will be hosted by the PENNVEST project specialist that covers those regions or counties of the Commonwealth. So if you're more of an in-person individual that likes to attend these types of trainings in person, we certainly have options for you as well. And as you've heard through the presentation today, your first step in securing funding through PENNVEST is to speak with your PENNVEST project specialist. This is a list of the PENNVEST project specialists that cover the Commonwealth, our names, email addresses, and phone numbers. Please do not hesitate to give us a call. We are happy to assist you with any questions that you have about our process, and we certainly look forward to working with you to finance your clean water projects. Thank you all for joining us today for the webinar. We certainly appreciate your time and your interest in the PENNVEST program. Again, if you have any other questions, if you have a project in mind, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to help you, and we certainly look forward to working with your municipalities, authorities, and organizations for your clean water project financing needs.